All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Good in the Head podcast. My name is Pete Jones, and I am Good in the Head. Today's show is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. Ono Northey is joining us. The reason I'm so excited about having Ono on as a guest is the way that I met him was through a Facebook group called Impact Theory League. We're both huge fans of Tom Bilyeu and all that he has created. And I don't know about you, but for me, the massive impact that he and his wife, Lisa, have had on my mind, and therefore also my life creation, has been immense and tremendous. And I'm so grateful for all that they've done. I'm also grateful for what you have done. You're an author who injects into the story sort of personal development that is really interesting. The C3GUS. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, and again, the book they call it C3 Gus, but yeah,
C3GUS.
it is an acronym though. Yeah.
Cool. And I know what it stands for, but can you explain the significance of C3GUS to everyone?
Well, it's a good word, significance, because it's in there. So the C3 Gus is the magic system that takes place in my book series. And it is how they unlock one of the shards, the mind shard, which is understanding people and being able to also control minds and all these things. And the acronym actually stands for 6 human needs, which is taken from Tony Robbins. So that is the certainty, connection, contribution, to the 3 C's. And then Gus is growth, uncertainty, and significance. So that is the 6 human needs. And he learns how to use those to see both sides of an argument and to understand who he's talking to and all these other things throughout. And the main character is a soldier with pretty severe PTSD. One reader called it well-earned PTSD because he's had some bad stuff's happened to him. So he uses that along with some meditation techniques to kind of process through that. And I actually interviewed a whole bunch of soldiers and ex-soldiers on kind of how they dealt with different things and things that they went through in the military. So the character himself actually goes through probably like most action heroes, everything happens to this one guy, and it's much more likely that one of these things would happen to one soldier and another thing would happen to another, but it makes it more interesting for the reader. So yeah, that's where the C3 Gus comes from.
That's awesome. So behind you, I can see the 3 books, the Shard Chronicles: Awakening, Aftermath, and Redemption. Now, I'm curious. I was watching something that Tom Bilyeu put out a week or 2 ago, and you had asked an author a specific question, something along the lines of, if you were writing a book and you wanted to infuse a quote or a message that aligns with your own story into the book and into the main character's life, what would that be? I was wondering where you got that question and why you asked that question of all questions.
Well, thanks. It's a fun question.
It is.
My book has a lot of different Yoda characters, different gurus and mentors, and sometimes the lessons are rejected by the main character, and then he kind of learns the opposite way, and so the hard way, as my dad would call it. And then sometimes he listens and he learns the easier way. And so those characters. The way I write books is I'll actually think like for example, the question that you're asking was for Vanessa Van Edwards. And so I was kind of modeling a character after Vanessa. And I was curious because she has, she calls herself a recovering awkward person. And she's very good at understanding like micro expressions and all these different things. And so I was kind of playing with an idea. I didn't end up making this character, but I was kind of playing with an idea of somebody who was very good at diagnosing different facial movements and stuff. And I ended up merging that skill set with another character that I already had, who's nothing like Vanessa. And so I ended up kind of moving away from that idea. But at one point, that was the idea. There's my editor likes to tease me. He says, there's 5 million pages on the editing floor, and there's 5 in the book. So but it's like, yeah, but those 5 are good. And so yeah, a lot of ideas kind of they get made and then chucked out for one reason or another. But yeah, I also think that it's an interesting question to ask somebody, because I try to ask people questions that they've never been asked before. And I think that if you look at, for example, Tom Bilyeu, right? I have a growth mindset, but my husband doesn't. Is there anything I can do? It's like, how many times can I answer the same question? And yeah, how do I find my passion? Well, let me tell you, right? So I think that when you come up with a question that they hadn't been asked before, and I got that from Tom, as well as what's his name, Sean, I think, on Hot Ones. He's another just fantastic interviewer, and yeah, that was kind of my hope, was that she would go, "Oh, I've never been asked that before." So yeah,
I seriously doubt that she had. That was one that I was like, hey, that made me think when I heard it. I had to push pause, and here I am at work, and I'm like thinking about what you just asked and how I would answer that. And then her answer was phenomenal. I thought the question was beautiful as well as the answer. And
how would you answer it?
The one thing in alignment with my own character, or the expansion that I'm working on personally, that I would put into a book.
If you had a character that was in a book, and the main character needed to learn something from that character, right? Like, what would be the piece that you, in a book, if you were in a book or some rendition of you, what piece of wisdom would you pass on to that character?
Personally, for me, I think one of the most important things that anyone can realize and begin to practice, and make it a lifelong practice, is the art of self-love, self-acceptance, and self-appreciation. And to be able to give those gifts to yourself and level up every time that you practice it, it then opens up a whole new realm and the ability to then do that for others as well.
And how would you teach the character to learn self-love? Like, let's say they were like, for example, this soldier, he's not too fond of himself, especially in the first book. And so what sort of perspective or lesson would you give him? Not the whole thing, but how would you start?
In any discussion, when people start to vibrate at a lower level and go downward in their thinking and their speech, they'll end up complaining about something or someone in general that makes them feel unappreciated or unloved or not validated. And at that point, ask the question, when's the last time that you validated yourself or appreciated yourself? I got that from an interview that I was watching a couple of years back, and it blew my mind. I immediately went to my phone, set an alarm, so self-appreciation goes off every day right at 3:15, end of my workday, and I review in my mind what I appreciate about me. What do I love about myself? What am I proud of myself for today? And I try to come up with a different list, make a game out of it every single day. And that has been one of the most empowering tools I've come across so far.
Very powerful. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with me. Maybe it'll make it into the series somewhere.
I'm kind of curious. Are you writing a 4th book now?
Yes. So this next section, my writing schedule is 1 book per year. My publishing schedule was 1 book per year, but this next the first 3 books happen in a linear timeline. So that's very easy to write, because it's almost like playing a role-playing game. You're like, oh, what's this character going to do? Oh, what's this character going to do? The next trilogy is incredibly complex. It has a nested storyline within a nested storyline that runs parallel to an additional storyline that happens parallel to a main storyline. So it's like writing 4 books at the same time, and it's been hugely transformative for me to try and figure out how to structure that in a way that makes sense. And yeah, I'm really getting into it now. The original plan was to write books like 4, 5, and 6, and then book 7. But now I'm actually writing book 7, and then there's flashbacks to what I'd call book 4, but might end up actually not being book 4, and 5 and 6. And it's all written in different orders because of the way that people talk to each other, and they're re-experiencing a memory, and then other people are talking about a memory within that memory, and it's so complicated. And the reader, when they're reading it, it'll just be like, oh yeah, this is great, like this is, makes total sense, and it won't be confusing at all. But as a writer, it is the hardest thing as a writer that I've undertaken. And so I'm very proud of what it is already, but it probably won't be ready for about 3 to 4 years, just because it's kind of like writing 4 books, and I know it takes me a year to write a book. So that's my loose guideline for myself on that one. So
that sounds realistic and brilliant.
Yeah,
I was wondering, within these stories, which characteristics and attributes and lessons you've learned in your own life, and all these experiences that you've gained within your lifetime so far, which of them have you kind of infused into the characters and the storyline of the books?
Yeah, that's there's too many to list, but I would say that I could maybe sum it up a little bit easier with the collective teachings of, and then like various people. Like, for example, Tony Robbins is very prevalent in books 1. Tom Bilyeu is very prevalent in book 2, and book 3 is a little bit more. What is that author? The Erbringer Institute, I think. It's Leadership and Self-Deception is the name of the book. I don't know who actually is in there. And then 177 Mental Toughness Secrets of the World Class. And these are all some of my favorite books or people or ideologies. And so I don't really think of it as so much as what lesson can I put into this book. What I think instead is like, what's going to happen to these characters, and then how can they solve those problems via the mindset that I can then put into the book. And so I'll think like, okay, this person needs to learn, I don't know, how to see things from 2 different sides and how to hold 2 competing ideas in their mind. Okay, so what does that look like for this character to learn that lesson? And then can I make it so that they can solve this problem via that method? And then what magical ability will coincide with that? And it kind of goes back and forth through that. So it's it's a lot, and it's great. My favorite mindset point, I think, is in book 2, when my editor is kind of the exact opposite of me. I'm totally into self-development. I have been since I was, I don't know, like in my teens. So I eat, drink, and breathe, Tony Robbins and Tom Bilyeu and Tim Ferriss and all these guys, right? And he hates all that stuff. He calls it all BS and everything else. So he's great, because he is effectively my target audience, because you don't need to convert the converted. You need to get people who are not the choir to which you are preaching. So whenever I always get him to push back on points and argue, and then I'll actually write down his objections, and then those will be my main character's objections to, and then basically I write it until my editor goes, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then I go, aha, and then that kind of goes into there. And it's funny because the early rough drafts of the book, my character was much more like me. And so the guy would say, the piece of wisdom, and he would go, oh, okay, that sounds good. Right? And I'm like, this is not what I want. I want people who are a tough sell to get the information. So he's been very instrumental to that.
I'm guessing that is something you've acquired along the way. I don't know about you, but my ego and I were going good. We were strong. We were happy. And then someone would disagree with us about anything, and immediately my poor little ego would get hurt and shatter and fall to pieces. And I would get resentful and bitter. And then eventually I learned that the most important people that I could ever surround myself with are the ones that challenge my thinking and really make me think a little deeper or at a higher level, and then come up with something even better. Like, always be upgrading, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think that some pieces of mindset have come more naturally too, and others were a bigger kick to the nuts.
Mhm.
For example, the book Leadership and Self-Deception, that one really threw me for a loop, because I thought that I was a good person, and I was actually being more like a bully. And I was trying to help people and change the world. And I had all these lofty goals, and I was doing it as an asshole, and it wasn't working. And that's
Sure.
why. And
In
that
what
was,
way? Fear, intimidation, manipulation? What
um,
do you think?
like, like, like playful bullying, like teasing,
Mm.
which honestly can work and does have its place. But I was using it as like the only tool in the toolbox.
Mm.
And that works well on me. Like, because I have a pretty thick skin. And, if somebody says like, hey, you're kind of being a bit of a dick, how about you stop that? I'll be like, oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
But like somebody else, that would be like, oh, he called me a dick. Right. So
Yeah.
like, that was tricky, and that's just because my dad and I, that's how we grew up, you know, um, that was his parenting style and everything else, and it worked, for
That's
me.
useful, huh?
But like, there's other tools in the toolbox, and I didn't really have those tools, and also I didn't have a growth mindset, so I was teaching by when I was when I was running my martial arts school, I was teaching primarily via fixed mindset methods. So I would call people a natural and say, oh, you're
Mm.
really good at this, and you learned this so quickly, ha ha ha, all these different things that are bad. And then on top of that, I would like,
Can you explain why compliments are bad?
compliments are okay. It's what you compliment that can be bad. So if I say that you are a natural, then what that tells you is I am only happy with your performance as long as you are learning it quickly and doing it well. So what do you want to practice? Do you want to practice this new thing that you'll probably make a mistake with? Or do you want to practice the old thing that you've already gotten praise with and you already know you're good at? Oh, the old thing, that sounds way better. And
Yeah.
so the student would stagnate and be unafraid, or sort of to be afraid to make mistakes. Whereas if you instead praise the progress or the effort that they're putting in, or their attention to detail, or something that scales, right? So
Yeah.
if you praise a fixed moment, then they will focus on the fixed moment. If you praise a percentage-based skill, for example, perseverance or trying hard, or those types of things, those scale. So a black belt can still get praise for trying really hard just as much as a white belt can. But a black belt, you're not going to be like, your jab is good, because if that's the praise you've been giving them the entire time as a white belt, then they're never going to be practicing other things. And I think that really extensive to all areas of life, and you have to do it with yourself as well, right? And that's one thing that I have definitely done over the years, is I've gotten much better at praising myself for putting in the work or doing the thing, rather than getting the book sale or something like that. Instead, it's like, you have done 5,000 advertisements and none of them worked, and this one is, congratulations, you didn't give up, rather than, congratulations, you're finally getting sales. Because if that book thing stops giving me sales, then I lose my praise. But if I'm praising myself for persevering and not giving up and all that stuff, then that's something that never goes away. That scales with any form of success or failure. So,
I love that. And all this is information I'm guessing that you got from Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. I think I got a lot from that book. And I owe Tom for telling me to read it. Yeah, that book was, I'm so grateful that I read that book before I had my son, because I had enough time to practice it on myself and get my wife to practice it on herself before my son was born. So that he, like the other day, it was so funny. He was about, well, not the other day, he's 6 now, but he was about maybe 4 or 5. And we were playing tag, and he yelled, "You can't yet catch me."
Yeah, that word, I love it.
Yeah, because it's like, it's like, man, you can't yet catch me, because he just automatically says can't yet. And he corrects like my wife, if she says like you can't have a cookie, he's like can't yet have a cookie. Like he's like he's on the ball. And he explains like how do you get better at that? Well, practice. And like, okay, cool. Like, you know, how do you make money? By solving problems. Like he has all of these fundamental truths already at 6 years old. It's just, yeah, like he's really, really something. And I definitely would have messed it up without Carol's book. And so, yeah, I'm very, very thankful for that. Not just Carol. I mean, there was lots of other gurus and stuff along the way. But Carol was definitely instrumental in that, for sure.
Can we go back to your childhood? I know that you yourself were bullied, mostly because of your name. And I was trying to think about how someone would bully you about your name. Like my name, my given name is Eli. Mm-hmm. And Ono, where does that come from? And how did the kids use it to get to you emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because, again, my dad was very good at, he was very good at instilling within me the self-confidence to counteract the bullying. So much so, actually, that I went from, instead of insecure, I actually went into the arrogant side of things. And so like nobody's opinion mattered to me, and that can be good, but it can also be, you know, a little awkward when you're, say, in a social situation and you've kind of been taught your whole life not to care about other people's feelings, you know, and you know, it doesn't matter. You're the only thing that matters and all that. So I actually had to go back and kind of address some of those things. But for the most part, it was very good. People would make fun of my name. It's Hawaiian. It means very good, which is something I try to live up to. But you know, it sounds like, oh no. So people would say like, you know, oh no, it's oh no, and all these different things, right? And yeah, they I think that kids kind of latch on to something different, and they chose me because of my name. And so yeah, I was bullied a lot, all the way from kindergarten to the end of grade 11.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it was a couple things. I was a bit of a spaz, and also kids like to attack things that are different from them. And because I had a different name, they just kind of latched onto that. And then it's just momentum after that.
Did they get reactions out of you every time, or did you navigate through that eventually learning not to?
I was so terrified to get into a fight because I thought I would kill someone, because my karate instructor always said that. One punch, one kill. You know, if you punch this way, it'll just like, that's it. It'll just kill the guy. And so I was so terrified to get into a fight because I thought I was going to kill the poor guy. And I was also really scared because I didn't want to get hurt. And so I never really fought back. I never really challenged a bully. And again, it's just momentum. You know, the same bullies are with you, so they keep bullying you, and it just becomes a thing that everybody does. And you know, it was the cool thing to bully me. Like when people wanted to make friends, if they bullied me, they would get into the cool kid club. And so I was just sort of like a rite of passage for a lot of people.
Interesting. I can't remember where I heard this, but the teaching was basically, you know, we get more of what we tolerate and we deserve more of what we allow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, between your greatest desire and your greatest fear lies your world, and it's whatever's stronger, right? And for me, my fear was much stronger than my desire, up until about grade 10. And yeah, I just kind of coasted through school. I wasn't, you know, very smart up until about grade 10, when I kind of figured out how to practice things. Until then, I assumed that people were smart or not. And so again, very fixed mindset. So I would go, yeah, like there's smart kids and there's dumb kids. There's athletic kids and there's not athletic kids. And so I was dumb and unathletic. And I didn't think that if I lifted heavy things, my muscles would get stronger. It never occurred to me to try.
So your self-identity up till that time was literally dumb and unathletic.
Yeah. Yeah. And my parents were incredibly, like full of praise and love and everything else. And, you know, it was a safe haven to go home. I had a fantastic family growing up. But yeah, I had a pretty shitty childhood at school. And so, I got really good at, computers and programming and video games and role-playing games and all the kind of social outcast stuff that now, by the way, is totally cool. Like all the people at school that are doing this stuff now, you got no idea.
Yeah.
But, when I was growing up, that was like the social outcast stuff. Nerds were not cool. It was, not a fashion line to be nerd chic and all that. And yeah, it was very hard. And then in grade 10, there was 2 transformative moments that kind of flipped the switch. One, that might have been in grade 11. I don't know, grade 10 or 11, anywhere around there. One was a soccer game. And for whatever reason, our drama teacher was going through something very emotional. And so instead of our drama class, we went out to play soccer with like some other group of people, and they were other students, but like different grades and everything else. And so all of a sudden I was in a soccer environment with all of the scariest bullies. They were all in this soccer team and they were all on the opposite side. And for whatever reason, I wasn't scared anymore because it was within the context of a game. And for fighters, the analogy would be sparring versus fighting. And it was like that. It was like, well, it's a game. Like, I'm not scared of a bully in a game, because if I, quote unquote, stand up to a bully in a game, well, I wasn't standing up to you. I was just playing a game, and so for some reason that was okay in my mind. And so I was running at them and yelling and screaming and everything else. And they were doing everything they could to hurt me. I don't know if you know what sandwiching is, but it's like when 2 people run and, one hits you on the front, one hits you on the back. And these are big dudes. And I was 100 pounds and I was 6 feet tall. So I was like really tiny, really, really thin, just a beanpole. And so they were, smashing into me, and I just kept getting up and running and everything else. And then eventually, towards the end of the game, I got a goal, and I heard this sound. It makes me emotional just thinking about it now. And I turned and I looked, and the entire school was watching this game, like from the inside. Like they were all pressed up against the glass, and I'm guessing it started out with, "Oh my God, they're going to kill Ono! Like look at they're doing this, and they're doing that." He just keeps getting up, and I don't know if it was like a perseverance thing, or if it was just like they wanted to see what would happen. But I got a goal, and the whole school was cheering. They were all cheering for me because I had overcome this thing, and I'd proven myself to them. And then also that year, or maybe this was grade 11, but there was a lip sync contest. And we did the Phantom of the Opera, and I was the Phantom, and it was very funny. And we had dry ice and fire pyrotechnics and everything else. And it was amazing. Like it was the coolest thing. And again, that really shifted it to all of a sudden, all these people who I would literally have to hide from were all of a sudden wanting to be my friends. And I still didn't become any of their friends, but they stopped attacking me. And so something shifted somewhere around there. And the other thing that happened in grade 10 was a teacher of mine. He asked me, because I was always getting like C minuses and D's, and like I was just a terrible student. And he asked me, he said, "Ono, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "Rich." And he said, "Oh, all right." And he took out a newspaper, which for the kids listening, it's kind of like an ebook, but in paper form. And he took it out, and it was this the stock ticker thing, right? And he said, "Okay, which one of these stocks would you pick?" I said, "I have no idea. I don't know what any of this stuff is." And he goes, "Then pay attention in class." Right? And I was like,
he was
what?
offering to show you how to get rich. How brilliant of him to ask you what you wanted and then offer it to you.
Yeah. And I went from D's to A's pretty much overnight. I got something like 97% in grade 12. Like it was, ridiculous. And that was why. It's because one teacher bothered to ask me the why question, right? Because that is the only thing you need. You just need a purpose. That's it. If you give somebody a purpose that's strong enough, that is literally all you need. right? There's a scene in Fight Club where he takes the guy out, and I think he's working in a convenience store or something like that. And he says, I'm gonna shoot you in the head unless you get your medical degree, in the next year or something like that, right? Like purpose. If you have purpose, you can do anything. And that's what he gave me. He took enough time to ask me what it was I wanted. And then he linked whatever lesson it was that he was learning or teaching rather, to my purpose. And that's it. After that, it was good. And now I have ADD. And so I have the unfair advantage of being able to really hyper focus on something that's high interest. And so all the teachers needed to do was figure out how to make the things that they were teaching high interest. And then I was blowing people out of the water. But until then, like in martial arts, I was always terrible at the boring, useless stuff because I'm like, this is useless. Like this, I'm never going to have a sai, which is like a 3-pronged knife. I'm never going to have that, right? Like, teach me how to fight so I can defend myself. Don't teach me how to fight in case I have a gardening tool from ancient China. Like, that's not going to help me, And so, yeah, I was always like that, where if I could find a reason to do something, I was very good at it. But if without a reason, I was always very poor at it. And so one thing that I teach my son is you are not in school to learn useful things. You are in school to learn the ability to learn hard things, to persevere when you are bored and still make progress. Because no matter what it is you are doing in your life, it's going to have a part in it that is boring and hard. No matter what it is. I don't care if you're going to be an artist who makes things out of tapioca. At some point, you got to make a website, or you got to market it, or you got to call up a sales agent or whatever. At some point, you're going to have to do something that is boring, that you don't want to do, in order to succeed at the thing that you love doing. And so that is the skill that they teach you in school, is to learn how to learn how to do things and to persevere, to learn boring things. That is what they're teaching you. And it is a very useful skill. And so if you can link all of these things, like my son wants to be Iron Man. So I link all the things that he's learning in school to Iron Man. I go, okay, you want to be an engineer? You want to make stuff? Okay, here's what you need. You need to know math in order to do that. You need to be able to write all of your schematics down. You need to know how to draw. You need to draw all of your schematics. You think Iron Man just does all this stuff? No, right? And so I kind of link all those things. So he's like, sweet. And he's reading at a grade 4 level because he needs to be able to learn, and he needs to be able to read an engineering textbook. And I bought him an engineering textbook.
Damn. That is just good parenting, man. I
love
that.
It's working well for him. Yeah. But like, I bought him an engineering textbook, and he looks at it and he goes, I don't know how to read this. I said, no problem. I'll teach you how. Right. So you can make an Iron Man suit or whatever it is you want to make. Right. Because maybe by the time you're a teenager, maybe you won't want to make an Iron Man suit. Maybe you'll want to make something else, like a self-driving car or something. Self-driving car, is that possible? Oh, yeah. Let me show you Elon Musk. He's a really smart guy. Boom, 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 boom. Right. How did he do that? Well, he invested his money. How do you invest money? Well, let me show you. Right. He's getting 10% on his stocks, on his stock portfolio. Like, he's a smart kid. Right. But it's all about, yeah. But it's all about linking stuff that's interesting, right? Purpose is, there's a reason that, like, I wrote an article on my blog, maybe we can put it in the show notes, but it's like how to find my passion, right? Because I think that is the most important question that anybody can ask. And I think until you ask that question, I don't know if fulfillment is possible without having a purpose. Maybe it is, but I don't know how.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that for sure. Now, you reframed ADD as a gift, and I loved that. I was told that I had bipolar disorder in '99, and I didn't even know what that was, never heard of it, manic depression, whatever, And until just recently, I had always thought of these, quote unquote, mental illnesses as detriments to us as humans, when in reality, like you just said, it's an unfair advantage to be experiencing these things. It's an unfair advantage to go through years of depression, because the further down life pulls you, it's almost like a bow and arrow, and you're the arrow, and it lets go. And then you shoot that much further because you went that much further back in the bow.
Agreed.
There's so many mental illnesses, and they deem them illnesses when really they're gifts.
I think that that comes a lot from the martial arts background, because everybody who comes in, I would tell them they have the perfect body for martial arts. It wouldn't matter what they look like, right? Everyone. Yep. And they would say, really? I would say, yeah. They say, but I'm, whatever, too thin, too fat, too tall, too short, whatever. And I'd say, yeah, well, you're tall and lanky, so your arms can wrap around necks very well for jujitsu. Oh, you're short and stocky, great. You've got a really good body for judo. You can toss people much easier because you're low to the ground. You got thin arms. Okay, that's great. You can do Wing Chun and you can enter this way. Oh, you've got really powerful arms. Okay, great. You can do like a Shotokan punch. You can hit this. Whatever, right? Whatever the person's ability is, there's a martial art that's geared towards that body type. And so you just tell them you have the perfect body for martial arts. Now, if you are a 4'11", incredibly thin person, and you want to be I don't know, like a Shotokan karate expert, I would go, well, like maybe not, right? Like maybe not, because that's not really the ideal body type for that thing.
And
right?
Then some people would say, "Watch me."
Yeah, and absolutely, and they can totally do it, right?
Like that little guy that used to dunk over really tall dudes in the NBA. You never know.
Sure, man. I mean, Scottie Pippen was a pretty short dude, but he was a professional basketball player alongside Michael Jordan, right? But if he was Michael Jordan, if he had Michael Jordan's body, then he might have done even better, right? And so it's about finding the skill set that you have, your natural talents, and then kind of putting those into what skills you want to develop, and go, okay, can you do this? Yes, it's going to be hard. Can you do this? Yes, it's going to be easier, right? So it's like, eventually you want to learn every aspect of martial arts or whatever it is you're learning, right? Every aspect of business, right? Like I need to learn every aspect of publishing, but it's much easier for me to do the writing, the outlining, the covers are pretty good, but like the marketing was really, really hard for me. Right. And as soon as I can kind of delegate that to somebody who does it and makes, great returns or something like that, I will, because that's better, because I don't enjoy it. Right. So, but I get that I have to do it. So, like Tom says, right, you can't make a racehorse out of a pig, but you can make a really fast pig. Like, I will be as fast of a pig as possible. But at some point, if I could hire a racehorse, that would be wonderful.
The Tom Bilyeu says two things that I absolutely love. He says, one, humans are the ultimate adaptation machine.
Yes.
And then basically everything that he teaches and shares is that ultimate adaptation machine can exponentially expand limitlessly. I mean, there is no limit. The limit is in our mind. Our mind creates what our body eventually will manifest in the physical realm. But the mind, once we get that right, man, what are some things that you do to get your mind right? Because obviously you've got a great mind. You've been through a lot, but is there like a morning routine or a certain set of things that you follow that empower you to then set yourself up for success throughout the rest of the day?
I have an advantage on this one, in that I'm extremely habitual. So it is not hard for me to make a new habit. It is very hard for me to break a habit, but it is very easy for me to make a habit. I'm not sure if I would be classifying myself as having an addictive personality, but I think it's probably in that realm. I've never
Being
drank.
Addicted to personal development is awesome.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is it is a easily harnessable thing, but people who struggle with alcoholism or something like that would have the same template. So I've never done drugs. I've had alcohol a total of, I think, 8 times in my life. One drink in all of those situations, and that was to commemorate a memory, to hardwire a memory into my body. So I can tell you exactly, like, rum is riding 2 dolphins up into the air, right? And so I can taste that memory because it's the only time I've had rum. So that would be like an example. But yeah, so I'm good at habits. And one of the things that I do, and I think I picked this up from Tony Robbins, but I could be wrong. But one of the things that I do is I take whatever it is I want to do, and then I work backwards to who I would have to be to get that result, and then what habits will get me to that identity. So, for example, it's like, okay, I want to be a best-selling author. Okay, so that means I have to write a book, right? And at some point, that book has to be good. So, okay, so that means that if I write for about 8 hours a day, then I'll probably have a book every year. Okay, cool. And so I work backwards from there. And so then I just figure out what habits I'll need to do that. And I have some really fun tidbits on making a habit or building so that you're not using willpower to create a habit, but instead you're using integrity, it's a much easier sell, because willpower is a consumable resource, whereas integrity is not. So you run out of willpower. And so I would take whatever it is I want to do, and I would just break it into habits. And then I go, okay, like, and then it's just a question of like a slider bar for time, right? Like, do I want to write one book every 10 years? Okay, cool. Then that's, 10 minutes of writing a day. Do I want to write a book every year? Okay, then that's somewhere between like 4 to 8 hours a day, right? And kind of figure that out and go, all right, that's kind of my schedule. That's what I want. The Shard Chronicles in my head is about a 15 book series. So I wanted to have the 15 book series, but then I also wanted to have time to turn it into a 15 season animated show. So I wanted to have time to do that. And so I'm kind of like, okay, that, and looking at my mortality and going, okay, I want to have this, I want that, like kind of, work out the different timelines.
Yeah, you got to prioritize, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
And delegation, like you said, is a gift. It's an art.
Whenever possible. Yeah, whenever possible. The hardest thing for me to delegate thus far has been the audiobook. I am very audio centric.
Me too.
And so if I was, for example, if I was making it into an animated series, I have like a rough idea of what I want it to look like. There's an animated show called Trace, and like the like TRESE, and it has beautiful animation. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want my series to look like. So I have that as like a template. But if it ended up looking a little bit different, like more like simplistic, like Samurai Jack or something, I'd be like, yeah, all right. Like I'm not married to it. It's like, yeah, all right, that's fine, right? But it has to sound a certain way. And I won't compromise on that. So that's been a very hard thing for me to do, is delegate the audiobook and finding the right narrators for the parts. And yeah, because they don't sound like that, and I have this like incredibly detailed dossier on what they sound like, what actors could portray them, where they pause in their sentences and everything else. And then for like looks, it's like, he's got like brown skin, he's about 6 foot tall, like like visual, it's like whatever. So that's very interesting. But yeah, I'm very audio specific, which is why I am really looking forward to when the audiobooks get made, because that's, for me, that's when I'll have officially arrived, is when they're audiobooks. Print books are cool, but audiobooks are an experience.
To me, I don't know. I just look at you and I think every moment that you're doing anything to acquire skills or do the work that manifests your very clear vision of where you're heading, you've already arrived in this moment. And then bam, next moment you're doing it too. And for me, I look at you as someone who has already arrived, and that inspires me truly. But the audiobook I'm interested in, because I work at Boeing. It's a factory, right? I'm a factory worker and I love my job. I've had opportunities to go elsewhere and make a lot more money, and I stay there because for 8 to 10 hours a day for the last 4 years, while I'm working with my hands, I get to download new content into my mind and make those connections. And damn, man, I never thought that my mind would be the way it is right now, especially in my darkest years previously, when I was raising my kids by myself and going through all that rough stuff. I had 3 sons, and I was very hopeless for a lot of years. And I didn't pass that along to them. They're so incredible. And the main lesson that they all took away is, hey, Dad's all right. He taught us what not to do his whole life with us, and I'm so grateful that they got that lesson rather than what a piece of crap he was, or picked up poor habits. But now they're watching me and they're like, oh, hey, there's something I could try out. And they're progressing very quickly now because they notice changes in me, and they're like, okay, what'd you join a cult? You got a new religion? What's going on here? And they want in. That I went from 265 pounds in 6 months down to 190 after watching the documentary Fed Up. And they watch, man, our kids watch us and they learn from what we do, not what we say. And for the first time in my life, I have a six pack, take out my shirt in front of my boys, and they're like, whoa, we're going to the gym, Dad. What are you doing? You know, they follow no matter where we go.
That is
And
so awesome. Good for you. That is so great. It is always, it's always weird for me to say this, but I will say why I say it in a second. But I'm proud of you for hitting that. That is an amazing, accomplishment. 265 to 190. That is nothing to sneeze at. Okay, that's like a couple of weight classes, right? You went from heavyweight to welterweight. Like that's very impressive. I am so proud of you for doing that. That is incredible.
thank you. It was not easy.
No, no, it wasn't. I remember, I was teaching a class and martial arts class, and the students had all just, I call it the Mickey Mouse print. It's when they sit on the ground and their butt leaves a sweat on the ground. It looks like Mickey Mouse ears. And so they all had the Mickey Mouse prints at the end of class. They'd all worked so hard, and I was so proud of them. And I told them that. And I asked them, I said, I want you to really think about this. Now, these people have been with me now for about 1.5 to maybe 2 years. Okay. And I said, I want you to imagine yourself before you started any of these classes, walking into this dojo. And I want you to look at the savages that just did this class and answer yourself honestly. Like, will you ever be able to do that? Like, or is it just like impossible, right? And they all raised their hand that there was no way that they could do that. Like, it was just beyond the scope of imagination that they could ever do what they just did today, right? And I told them, I said, like, what else are you holding yourself back on? What else do you think right now is impossible? And I told them I was proud of them. And this one student in particular, she was 55-ish, and she was recovering anorexic and spousal abuse and all this other stuff. And she just started crying. And I said, I told her, it's a good thing. I'm proud of you, let it out and everything else. And she goes, no, it's not just that. She said, no one has ever told me in my whole life that they were proud of me. And I was like, wow. And I think that we don't say that because it sounds almost kind of condescending, like, oh, like, I'm proud of you. Like, it sounds almost condescending when somebody says it, because especially if they're younger, right? Like, if I'm like, a 40-year-old guy and I tell a 70-year-old person that I'm proud of them, it's weird and it comes off sometimes, but some people go their whole lives without hearing that. And so from that point on, I just started saying it no matter when, as long as it was genuine. Like when I was proud, like, going from 265 to 190, I am so proud of you. That is incredible. That is an incredible achievement. It is not easy to drop from 265 to 200. 190. That's amazing. And they say, like, the last 10 pounds are the hardest, and they are. They are. So good for you.
That's interesting. The woman that you're talking about, I wonder how often, since she was beat down and programmed to get to where she was at her entire life, really. I mean, I wonder how many times she thought about herself and was proud of herself. I'm betting never.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yet,
that,
right?
yeah, yet. I think that after that, it was a real big turning point for her.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and I think that she started. I think she started saying it to herself. You never know what's going on in somebody else's head, and I definitely have been guilty of seeing people through rose-colored glasses and assuming that they are in a better state than they are.
Oh yeah, same here, man.
But
I always put people on pedestals, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's my old way of doing things.
Yeah, but I do think that was a big turning point for her. That is this thing that I'm so addicted to, is taking somebody from knowing that they can't do something, and then watching that look in their eyes when they realize that they just did. And a lot of the time, they don't even fully recognize it until you ask them that question. You say, what was that thing again that you said you couldn't do? Remember about a year ago? Do you remember what that was? And they're like, oh, right. and you're like, yeah, you just did that, like that is such an amazing feeling. It's the one thing I really miss from teaching martial arts is doing that. And the question became at scale. How can I create that moment at scale? And the books are the next stage in that, where it's impacting the world at scale. Where now I don't get to see it anymore, but I do get love letters every now and then. Somebody will send me a thing, and my favorite one, I have it framed somewhere, is this. He's about a 16-year-old kid, and it's just it's like spelling mistakes, and like you can tell that like the education was like, he's like, yo dog, it's like how it starts, right? But it's like, that C3 guys bullshit that you have in your book, yo, that shit actually works, like and then he's like talking like, I don't know if you know this, but like, like, and like the way it's phrased in his praise is that it was accidental. Like I accidentally made this thing and it was just sort of some bullshit that I came up with, but it actually works, and I should be telling people that it actually works. It was kind of like the way he was saying it. I was like, that's it, like that's the juice, that's what it's for, is to hit people who are currently unhittable. Because when, a little bit of a tangent, but when I was graduating high school, my mom gave me a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Mm-hmm. And I put it on my bookshelf, and it stayed there until I was, I don't know, like 26 or something like that. And when I was 26, I bought the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I went to go put it on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
And it was there.
I've done that.
It was an organized bookshelf, but it wasn't dusted very often. And so I was like, oh, it's already there. And I took it out, and there was this beautiful inscription by my mom about how this book would change my life and everything else. So what was the problem? Clearly, the book was written terribly, right? No.
Right? It was a brilliant book.
Yeah, that wasn't the problem. So what was the problem? Right? It was the fact that it was a self-development book, and I was a teenager, and teenagers don't want self-development. They don't need it. They're perfect. They won't be, and they'll be perfect until about 26 years old, and then all of a sudden they realize all this stuff they must have forgot. So when you are a teenager, you don't want a self-development book, but you need a self-development book when you're a teenager. So that was the question I asked, was like, how can I do that? How can I, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, right? How can I do that? How can I, put explosions and naked people and action and gunfights and everything else? Can I do that and teach a lesson? Can I somehow do that? And that was kind of the thesis statement of the Shard Chronicles, was, can I do that? And turns out, yeah. Turns out, yeah, you can.
That's something that I really love about what you've been doing. I know that you have been a teacher of the martial arts. You've infused lessons into these attractive and exciting books geared towards kids. I think I read somewhere as well that you said you had a daycare.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're an entrepreneur as well. I mean, you've got so many things that you're doing, and they're all, in my opinion, going well. And you're learning a lot of lessons along the way, enjoying some quote unquote failures, and you're learning from it, trying again relentlessly and persistently, and then upgrading and then learning more. And I think that's awesome that you target children, especially. They're the future.
Yeah, the daycare was the result of asking us a different question, which was, how can I spend time with my son and get paid to do it? And because I was like, okay, there's no way. We moved out to a new area, and the martial arts school was not going to fly. And even if it did, a baby in a martial arts school that's just a bad idea. People yelling and running around, it's not going to work. So I had to kind of rethink my thoughts. I was like, how can I do that? And the daycare was perfect because I could teach him and all these other kids. And so it was great. And yeah, that was why I did that. And just one thing to clarify: the Shard Chronicles is not for kids. It was, 14 and up, I would say, would be good, because I mean, it's violent, and there's sex scenes and all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to go to the lizard brain as hard as possible, especially in the first book, where it's just like, what did I want when I was a teenager? right? Sex, violence, sugar, right? Those are the three things that I want. I haven't been able to figure out how to make the book taste good, but other than that, sex and violence is in me, right? And so I wanted that. I wanted to hit that lizard brain, that we want, and then instill all this other stuff, all these other tools. And my sub goal is to make like C3 Gus part of the modern vernacular, like the same way, like I'm old enough to remember a time when people would make a mistake and not say "dope." Like people didn't used to do that, right? That's because The Simpsons has been around for, I don't know, 20 years or something like that, right? That's because it's been a pervasive influence on our vernacular. So the same thing can be done with anything, right? I am the one who knocks, right? You get these little things that people can say from various TV shows, and it permeates the culture. So that's my goal, is that if everybody knows what C3 Gus is, then I will have done my job with this series. That's kind of the benchmark metric that I'll be using, is that when people are, if they can just sort of say it, like, like, so what's that guy's C3 Gus or whatever, if they can just sort of use it and everybody kind of goes, yeah, right. If they can use that in everyday conversation, then I'll have done my job. So that's kind
at this point, I'll ask you again to repeat the meaning of C3 Gus, and then I'll tell you why in a second.
Sure. It's more complicated than this, but the 6 human needs are certainty, connection, contribution, growth, uncertainty, and significance. And so the acronym C3 Gus, there's 3 C's, a G, a U, and an S. Within that, and this is more book 2, but within that, each one of those needs to be fulfilled, needs to be, right? It's not optional. And so you can do it positively or negatively. You can do it in ways that empower you or disempower you, but you still must fulfill those needs. So my favorite example is, significance, right? You can get significance from teaching people martial arts. You can get significance from writing a great book and getting, 5-star reviews and all that type of stuff. You can also get significance from holding a gun to somebody's face and saying, "Give me your fucking money." Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep. Like, you're pretty significant. You can have anything you want.
Right? Like, you are very significant. They are not taking their eyes off of you, and you are definitely there, right? You can get significance from sympathy, right? Oh, I have such a terrible life, and oh, you think your life is terrible? Let me tell you about my terrible life,
dude,
right?
Guilty.
Right?
I was such a victim for so many years, and I used sympathy to get significance. Yeah, and you're so right. Negative or positive, we choose.
And so being able to show, because what so many people fail at is they'll see somebody with a problem and they will tell them to stop doing that thing. Like, that's it, right? Like, you're addicted.
There's a payoff.
You're addicted to something, so just stop doing that something, right? And then what they'll do is they'll use that willpower and they'll try to stop doing that thing. And their need that was being fulfilled is no longer being fulfilled. Mm-hmm. So they fail. Yeah. But if you can show them that instead of doing that thing to get that need fulfilled, you can do this thing, and your life will be better because you're fulfilling this need in a positive way. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I am still getting my needs fulfilled at the same level or even higher, but in a positive way. And that's one of the reasons why I prescribe martial arts to almost every person I meet as a solution to their problem, because you get like at least 5 of the 6, if not all 6, at high levels. So you can really compartmentalize a lot of the problems in somebody's life and go, okay, I get that you're getting this need fulfilled in this way. Have you considered martial arts? Because it will fulfill that need at a high level in a positive way. And plus, you'll be getting in, good shape and having lots of fun and being surrounded by people who are all trying to do awesome things together. And there's going to be all these other things that are going to kind of coincide with that, but it'll fulfill that need. That's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it. I have not found a better thing to prescribe to people, or I would. But yeah, I think that, meditation is great. And self-development is great, and books are great. But I think that if I had to pick one thing, it would be martial arts. And it doesn't really matter what style. Ideally, it would be a style that benefits your body so that you enjoy it, and a mindset that you enjoy. Like, for example, if you were really what's the word I'm looking for, like a pacifist, right? And I put you into like a Muay Thai class, you probably wouldn't enjoy it. Right. But if I put you into like a jiu-jitsu class or an aikido class, or even maybe even a judo class, something where you're kind of redirective and flowing and moving, and a relaxed environment with, not a competition based sport, but more of a collaborative based sport, they'll love it. Right. So, I mean, there's a certain mindset that you need to go in with. Whereas if somebody's like, say Tom Bilyeu, like really competitive and very aggressive or something like that, like I would put him into a boxing class and just hold pads, no sparring, just hold pads, right? He would love it. He would love it, right? But he's afraid of brain trauma, so he refuses to try it. And I'm just like, no, there's lots of ways you can do this without brain trauma, right? So it's about finding the right vehicle. But I think that, being able to prescribe a specific type of martial arts to somebody would be, that would be the billboard.
They say that action is the antidote to despair.
Yes.
And I really agree with that. And whether it's a walk 5 minutes in the morning or a martial arts class at night for an hour, any kind of action that we can take, any kind of way to move the blood and the lymph fluid throughout our body, it upregulates the immune system. It generates a chemical cascade that completely alters our state and empowers us to do more and to really just be more as humans. And I love that you said that.
Well, and martial arts, the kinesiology of martial arts is the antithesis to depression. So that was a lot of syllable words, but
well done.
but yeah, good job, me. But yeah, basically, like, in order to be depressed, your body is going to take on a certain posture. It is very, very difficult to have a big smile on your face and your shoulders back, breathing deep and heavy and everything else, and still be sad. Can it be done? Yeah. But is it really difficult? Yes. So if you put somebody into an environment where they're forcing themselves to breathe diaphragmatically, they're forcing their body into like dramatic, explosive motions and running and jumping jacks and laughing and playing and all this type of stuff, it's really hard. It's really hard to be sad in that type of situation, especially because if you lose focus, you get punched in the nose. So you have to be focused. You have to be present. You have to be in that environment for about an hour, right? And so for about an hour, you flood your body with endorphins and the proper kinesiology of happiness and abundance and all these things. I remember one time I was in a big fight with my girlfriend, like a huge fight. Like, she was yelling and throwing stuff. And I'm like, I got to go to class. And so I went to class and I came home and I was like, hey, I'm home. And she's like, hey. And I'm like, right, we're mad at each other. I totally had forgotten. Like I totally forgot that I was mad. And I was like, right, mad, sorry. Right, I can do this. And I had to put my body back into that state. Right. So yeah, it's a very powerful thing. I think that for some people, yoga might be the answer. It's too slow moving for me though. I find that yoga doesn't change my state. It helps me pontificate on my state, and it helps me analyze my state, but it does not help me change my state. I find that martial arts changes it.
Yeah, I can see how that is true. I love yoga, and my son and I went with one of my stepsons, and he's still doing it. He's just awesome. But we did a month membership at a Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym, and we took class, and it was awesome. And he learned just a couple moves, but the first night there, this girl half his size just whipped the shit out of him. And I'm like, what? And he goes, Dad, this is so cool. Did you see that? I didn't know what to do. But he learned really quickly that month and those classes we took. And he's been in a lot of physical altercations. He's in the Army now, and he's never lost one because of those 2 or 3 moves that he learned in there in that 1 month. Yeah. It's very useful.
Yeah. Jiu-jitsu is nuts because it is, the learning curve on jiu-jitsu is harder than a striking art because everybody knows how to throw a punch, badly or not. We all know how to throw a punch. You put your hand, you know, maybe you put your thumb on the inside, right? But like you put your hand, you make a fist, and you throw it in the general direction of the thing that you're trying to hit, and it makes a sound, right? You put a boxing glove on, you're probably not going to hurt yourself. You know, you bonk it, good enough, right? But nobody knows how to do jujitsu. Like nobody's just born with that ability, right? Nobody has ever just gone, okay, so I need to put all of my weight on my shoulder and the balls of my feet, and everything else is up off the ground, and I need to lift on a 45-degree angle, not 43, 45 degrees, right? I need to lift this up, and like nobody knows how to do that, right?
Dude, it is a beautiful art that anyone can learn, but it takes time and practice.
But
Just
yeah,
like anything, really. You know what I mean?
when you learn it though, man, it's like, yeah, there's something very magical about. And what's weird about jiu-jitsu is that you're learning it alongside everybody else. So everybody else that you start off with is growing at approximately the same speed as you. So sometimes you don't really notice your improvement until a new person joins. And that new person outweighs you by 80 pounds. And you play with them like they're a child, and you go, holy shit, like I must have picked something up, you know?
Just
Yeah.
automatically.
Yeah, it's an amazing art. I think everybody should take, especially females, but everybody should take at least 6 months of jiu-jitsu just to have a basic understanding of like, this is how you move on the ground. And if you fall down, this is how you get back up. Like just having that ability is, you know, why do we fall, Master Bruce? To learn to pick ourselves back up. Like, yeah, just to have that ability. If people don't want to take a striking art, I understand. Striking is scary, you know, like especially if they're punching back. And, you know, and yeah, I get it. Like, I think it's useful. And I think that there's a way to teach. You know, I had a 78-year-old blind diabetic woman with a prosthetic hip, a prosthetic shoulder. And she took class in my kickboxing class. So I'm just saying, like,
no excuses.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a blind student, like a full-on blind student. She wasn't blind. She could see, like, they call it legally blind. So like she could see fuzzy shapes. I had a full-on blind student. Yeah, like, is it harder? Yeah. So what?
Yeah.
You know?
I'm bad at it. I want to get better, and I'm not there yet. You know, anybody can upgrade and improve. That brings me back to the idea of repetition. I had read some critical response or feedback to someone who read your books, and they said that, oh, this C3 Gus stuff is strewn throughout the book too many times. And I'm like, whoa. I disagree. Now, I haven't read the books yet, and I really want to wait for the audio version because I have more time to listen than I do to read.
Yeah.
But the idea behind repetition, and that's why I had you repeat what it meant again, is because through repetition, we reprogram the subconscious, and it's through our subconscious that we create our personal reality 95% of the day. And that's Bruce Lipton's work.
The feedback was valid though. I remember that feedback specifically, and here's a lesson for any author out there. Negative feedback is always right, but rarely is the feedback accurate. So something is wrong, but rarely is it the thing that they are complaining about. So they'll say, I don't like this scene because the curtains were red. But the problem is actually that you didn't explain that the carpet is blue. That's actually the real problem. And so when somebody complains that something is repetitive or something like that, it's because it was clumsily repeated, or it's because the person, it was in the wrong place. It needs to be repeated later when the reader's actually forgotten, or it needs to be said in a different perspective. Like they need to be yelling it at each other instead of saying it calmly, or somebody needs to be able to link it to something like where the character doesn't remember in the book. And so he's desperately trying to remember it before something bad happens. So you can change where something is boring and repetitive and exciting and repetitive. And so the feedback of it being repetitive or being repeated too many times is valid. And I actually changed it so that it now, I don't think I would get that same feedback from that same reader. Of course, there's no way of knowing, but
so that was beneficial to you then to receive the feedback, to take it in, process it, and then take appropriate action.
Yeah,
If you wanted to, you could have left it as is, and so many people would have loved it exactly as it was, I'm guessing.
I have the privilege of writing in an age of ebooks where and Amazon, where book one is the fourth book that I've written because I went back and rewrote it. So the first version of book one was not very good. And book two was pretty good. And book three was great. And then I went back and I rewrote book two based on the stuff that I learned in book three and went, now book two is great and book three is great. And then I went, geez, I should probably go back and rewrite book one. And I reread book one, and it was just, compared to my skill set now, it was awful. And so I rewrote book one. So book one is actually the fourth book that I wrote, or maybe even fifth book, because I kind of rewrote book two. So like you learn as you go. But there's no evidence of that, except for a few print copies that some people have, right? And it's hilarious because you have an old version of the book if Steve, who's the guy on the cover of book one, if his left arm is really, really short, because somehow nobody noticed that he had this little dwarf arm on his left side and a full length arm on his right side. Nobody noticed, and like not my editor, not me, nobody, none of us noticed. And then at one point, I was actually talking to somebody on a Zoom, and my background is the books, and they're like, "How come his left arm is so short?" I was like, "Oh my god, how did nobody notice this?" And so I went back and I updated the cover. So yeah, if people, you can, you look at your old books. If you've got one of those, hold on to it because it might be a collector's item someday.
That's awesome.
Yeah, short arm Steve. Yeah.
So feedback to you is gold, and to me as well. Now, it didn't always used to be. That's kind of a recent thing. The self-identity you had growing up was, I'm not very smart and I'm unathletic. Now you're excellent at habituating useful practices to upgrade your personal reality.
I never actually answered that question about my morning routine. I'm sorry. Yep. Okay,
no, that's fine.
Got on a tangent. So yes, morning routine, very habitual. I wake up at 5:30. I get out of bed in 10 seconds or less, or I give $1,000 to charity. I then boil water. I go to the bathroom, all that stuff. Come out, make myself a thing and my son some oatmeal. Go downstairs, write my book. Exercise, meditate, exercise. Finish writing my book, and then shower, start the day, wake up my son, and get going. So that's all the stuff that I do in the morning, and it's in that order. I don't actually eat the oatmeal until 10 or sometimes 11:30, depending on my fast window, but it's made and ready. And
so you do intermittent fasting then?
Yes. Usually 16-hour fast, and sometimes as much as 17 and a half, depending on just what I'm trying to do.
How long have you had this routine? That's amazing.
The fasting part, I think, is only about 2 years old, I think. And the rest of it, to a certain extent, has been longer than that. Basically, when I moved, it's funny actually, when I moved out here. So there's an article on my website. It's called "How to Do," and it is how I make myself habitual. And the downside is that because you are habitual, you are not using willpower, and you are not thinking about your morning routine. It is habitual. Like brushing your teeth. You don't think, should I brush my teeth this morning? You just brush your teeth, right? So the downside of that is that if you move locations, all of your habits go away. And
including your vacation.
I literally gained 20 pounds when I moved to a new house.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I had to remake all of my habits. And habits take about 3 months to kind of instill, or at least 30 days. And so I was constantly just like where do I, little tiny things like stretching in the shower. All of a sudden, the shower was in a different place, and so stretching didn't come naturally, and the height of the shower was in the wrong spot. So if I stretched to the left, then the water would go in my ear, and it was uncomfortable, and so I didn't stretch in the shower, so I got tight legs, and just like all these little things that I had to remake, all these little habits I had to remake. It took me quite a while to
So you stack your habits, you kind of
Yes.
combine them and do multiple things at once, and you've automated it over the years so that you
Yes.
literally just create your own chemistry and
Yes.
set your whole day up for success.
Yes. Yeah. And it is for some people, they need consequences, and other people, they need motivation. Right. So I like to use both on myself when I need to, but for the most part, I'm more about the purpose, the thing that's pulling me. I'm excited to get out of bed. I want to get out of bed.
Mhm.
I resent having to go to sleep. Like that's that is what I'm naturally like that. I'm much more purpose driven than I am. I'm more carrot and less stick. But on some things, I use the stick just in case. So getting out of bed in 10 seconds or less. That is just one of those, like, sometimes the purpose isn't enough because I'm a little sleepy or something, and so I don't want to get out of bed. And so, yeah, I need to have a little bit of a stick there just to kind of give me that extra little bit, right? So,
You ever find yourself getting caught up in the doing and less the being, more of a rigid lifestyle? It's all black and white and just have to do this way or else. Or are there times where you can kind of relax and take some rest time and downtime and heal?
I'll answer that with a strategy, or the way I schedule my life. I don't schedule time. I schedule identities and resources. So when I am writing, I am not a dad or a husband. I am an author, and that is what I'm doing. And I'm using up my creative resource. And once my creative resource is done, then I switch hats, and then I go and do the next thing on my list, or be the next person on my list. I got this idea from a Batman book where he puts on the cowl to become Batman. And he gets into a fight before that, and he's really not very coordinated and not very good because he's Bruce Wayne. And as soon as he puts on the cowl, he becomes Batman. And I read that soldiers do that when they come home from the war. They have this silly hat that their daughter makes them, and it's got all these stickers and stuff on it. And they take off their soldier hat and they put on their dad hat. And it's a way of transitioning back to civilian life. I think it's a very powerful totem or metaphor that you can apply to your life. And so I don't view it so much as a structured, like not being. It's kind of the opposite. I'm fully present with different facets of myself. So when I am writing, I am fully present as an author. I'm not also thinking about investing or parenting my son, or if our anniversary is coming up or whatever, right? I'm thinking about writing, and that's it. And so I'm very present in that moment. And then conversely, when I'm with my son, I'm not thinking about my book. So I'm just hanging out with him, and I'm very present, and I'm enjoying that. So it does seem a little structured, and I could see how that would be like, oh, like you're not enjoying life because you are. But like Jocko says, like discipline is freedom. I think that having that awareness of which aspect or which facet of myself would be the best to deploy in this particular situation, it actually serves me, and I don't feel stifled or repressed or anything like that. I feel like every facet of me gets to be fully expressed.
Nice. I like that. Zig Ziglar, I think it was, said, look, we all want to be free, but if you take the train track or the train off the train tracks, it's not going to go anywhere. And we all have tracks that we can align with and strategically place ourselves onto in order to go somewhere quickly and efficiently.
And not to make yet another martial arts analogy, but like if you are sparring and you're thinking about something else, you're going to get bumped in the nose, right? Like you have to be present. You have to be focused on what it is you're doing.
Yeah, to be able to compartmentalize the different roles of your life and like put them all away but the one, that's to me a brilliant strategy to really be fully present in the here and now And I really like that. Now, something that struck me as interesting on your website, let's say life is a video game. How do you think life is like a video game?
Yeah, I think that we all have various stats, XP, experience points that we can delegate to our bodies and our minds or whatever, and we need to choose how to disperse them or distribute them, so that what kind of character class do you want to make? What do you want to be? Do you want to be an author? Okay, well then you should probably read a bunch of books and write a bunch of books, right? Like, so that's going to level up your authoring stat, right? If you want to be a really great dad, okay, well then you need to practice empathy and communication and listening, and those are all stats that you're going to have to develop. I was terrified to be a dad because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it right, and I realized that I needed to level up my courage. In order to be a good dad, I needed to level up my courage. So I jumped out of an airplane because that was the fastest way that I could figure out how to level up my courage. And it worked. It worked. I wasn't scared anymore because those things transfer over. Like if you develop more courage, then you are more courageous in every other aspect of your life.
So it bleeds over into all other areas.
Yeah.
Level up in one area and everything else improves.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's again, why I'm so passionate about martial arts, is that it levels up so many different things in your body and in your mind that it just kind of naturally bleeds over. Like I can tell. I can go to a garage sale and some kid will be trying to tell me something. And I'll go, what martial art do you take? And they'll be like, how do you know I take martial arts? I'm like, I can just tell. Like there's just something about a person that there's these little things that are developed better. And again, I don't think there's anything else that does that.
I just never thought about martial arts like that ever. I love that. And you've kind of sold me now. You're a great salesman. I just want to go back to BJJ class now.
Well, it's funny. I had 100% close rate on my martial arts school for nearly a year. And yeah, so yeah, I am very passionate about it, and I can, so yeah, I'm glad I've sold you on that.
Interesting. When you know what people want, and obviously they're checking it out, right? But when you really know what they want and why they want it, then you can tailor make the message, just like your teacher did with you in high school, right?
Yes.
And so
it doesn't matter why you're taking it. The class is the same, but it really matters why you're taking it, so that you know what you're learning and why you're learning it, right? I'm going to get guy who wants six-pack to do jumping jacks because I want his body to drain his lymph, and I want him to have a higher cardiovascular rate, and I want him to do that stuff. I'm going to get the guy who wants to be a professional fighter to do jumping jacks so that he has stronger calves so that he can move his footwork better in and out. It's the same jumping jacks, right? But like, both people are going to be doing it for totally different reasons. One of them is going to be focusing on those abs and going, you're going to grow, you're going to grow. The other person's focusing on their calves going like, you're going to bounce and you're going to move. Like it's about, finding the why.
So how else is this life like a video game? Have you ever considered life like a virtual reality experience, and this human body is simply the machine which we use to experience everything?
Yeah, simulation theory is fascinating. Elon says it best, I think it was Elon, where he says, like, if you assume even a small increment, like a 1% improvement in virtual reality, then eventually we will create a reality that is indiscernible from our current reality. Mm-hmm. And so that begs the question, what is real life like? If we are in a simulation, what is real life like? I would propose that it's boring, because you don't play video games that are less exciting than your real life. So if this is a video game, then it's probably more interesting than the person's life who's playing it. The fascinating thing about that is that if that's true, if you choose to believe that we are in a simulation, then that means that you chose the life, the character that you're building right now. So that means that you probably started out with like the hedonistic, all the mates and the drugs and the alcohol and every rock star life, and you're a billionaire and everything else. You probably played all of those ones. And now you're playing your life because you chose it, because you want this life. You wanted to learn empathy. You wanted to learn kindness. You wanted to learn perseverance. Whatever it is you wanted to learn, you chose that. So if we are in a simulation, that would be an empowering way to look at it, is that the life that you chose is one that you chose, and that you want to see if you can do it. It's on hard mode, maybe, right? Maybe you grew up and, you were abused as a kid, and, you struggled with drug addiction, and, you're thinking, I would never choose this life, right? Okay, yeah, maybe you're on hard mode. Maybe you want to see if you can do it. And maybe like once you finish this game, you're going to be really proud of yourself because you made it. Because, it's you didn't give up, and it's hard. And, like I like to play Halo with just the pistol, with just the pistol and not the other guns, right? Because it's harder, right? So it's the same idea. It's like maybe somebody chose that life because they want that life. Or maybe it's not a simulation, right? But I just think there's an empowering way to look at that, because I think a lot of people would look at a simulation in a disempowering way. I think they would look at it like, well, if this is a simulation, then who cares? Like, I might as well just go drive off a cliff or whatever, so I think that there's an empowering way to look at that, which is that you chose this life, and let's see if you can get the high score.
I like that. And inevitably, the people that have the most difficult lives and go through the most challenges, if they make it through, they have by far the most inspiring stories. I mean, look at pretty much every one of Don Bellew's guests.
Yeah, exactly. They are, maybe some of them have had a sugar-coated life where everything's just been handed to them, but I don't think so. Most of them seem to have, like, oh yeah, this was bad. But then eventually I turned it into something good, and then, everything else, right? So Rhonda Rousey actually had a really powerful quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but but she said, when she was sleeping out of her car, and she was just like, miserable and everything else, she says, this is just the middle part of the book where the hero finds a way to overcome. And this is just the middle of the book.
Hell yeah.
I love that. It's such a great way. And
that's awesome.
I wouldn't necessarily describe Rhonda as like a fount of wisdom where she's always coming up with these mindset stuff. I think that she has a lot of her own challenges, but that one piece was just so brilliant. I love that piece.
For sure.
Yeah.
Something that you wrote that I thought was brilliant was something along the lines that, suffering is never experienced by one who has purpose. And if someone's so hyper focused on that purpose and doing everything, saying, thinking, speaking, everything that has to do with that purpose and aligns with it at all times, they don't have time to suffer. And that was empowering for me. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure and honor. I think that if you have a reason for whatever it is you're doing, a very, very strong reason, then everything is a skill that you are developing towards that reason. If you absolutely need to, have a six-pack, you have to, right? It's your mission in life, right? Then each one of those sit-ups that burns is like a little extra coin in a video game, ding, ding, you're getting points, right? But if you hate it, if you hate the exercise and everything else, then each time you do the sit up and burn, it's like you're losing a life, or your power bar is going down. I think that it's the same action, but if you have a really strong purpose, then like you're leveling up. There's a game called Skyrim where if you crouch and walk around for a bunch of times, you get stealth upgraded, and people are very happy that their stealth is going upgraded. But if you took away that stealth being upgraded, then it would be miserable to crouch and walk around for a bunch of times. It's pointless, right? But if you add in that leveling up mechanic, all of a sudden it's like, I found a way to level up quickly. I just have to crouch and walk around for a while, and I'll level up this skill. Life is like that. You can take pointless things or painful things or things that bug you or whatever, and if you put them and if you link them up to some progress bar, some XP bar that all of a sudden you're excited to getting, then you're like, sweet, like, this is awesome. I'm leveling up courage. I had briefly had a stint where I was working on the rigs, the oil rigs. And I had this very stupid city boy mentality who had never lived anywhere close to Saskatchewan. And I was in a rent-a-car and I'm driving through ridiculous amounts of snow. And I'd never really driven in snow of any length or any depth rather. And I was literally yelling to myself in the car as I was swerving left and right, I am developing courage. I am developing courage. So I'm like screaming at myself and hoping not to die. So yeah, I really think that is something that you can focus on. If you think about the progress bar that you're developing, it can give, like Viktor Frankl says, right? A man with a strong enough why can endure anyhow. Right?
That is so true. For years I worked in the oil industry and well, drilling for gas mostly, but oil as a byproduct. We were in Wyoming, Colorado, a lot of different places. And so I'll have to talk to you about that another time. I want to be respectful of your time.
Sure.
Good in the Head is all about providing a safe place for anybody who wants to come and learn about possible upgrades that they could experiment with and use to create a far better and enjoyable, more useful, effective personal reality for themselves. So just real quick, 3 top upgrades that you would recommend for either children or adults.
Martial arts, number 1. Basics of investing, that'd be number 2. And find a purpose. Find a reason to want to do all the hard things that you're going to have to do those things.
What are the best books to read to do just that?
For martial arts, I would say you want to talk to the instructors and ask yourself if they are somebody you would like to be like. So just go and talk to them and ask them about their philosophy on life, ask them, how they dealt with challenges or whatever it is you want to know, right? And if they are someone that you would like to aspire to be like, then they usually will give you a free class or a free month or something like that. Go to their class, talk to their high-ranking students, see if they are also becoming on their path to becoming like the instructor, or if they're being taught by other people and becoming different ways. And don't be afraid to shop around. You can find, in most cities, there's at least 5 or 6 different martial arts schools. So shop around, find one that suits your current mindset and your future mindset that you are aspiring to be like. Works for parents too. Interview the people, because they will become like the instructor more than they will become like the parent. Because the black belt is basically Batman, and they will listen to them no matter what they tell them to do. So make sure that they're going to be telling them things that you want them to hear. So that would be for martial arts. For investing, I'll just give you guys a link to my course. You can have it for free. It's fine. That'll answer all the questions, because that is too hard to answer in a short, succinct podcast form. Not that I've been that succinct. I've been talking a lot, but
we'll put that in the show notes below. Then
take that course. Real quick, I took $25,000 to $250,000 to eventually $500,000 in about a year, and it was substantial, and it was a result of a lot of tools, a lot of methodologies that are very likely not unique, but they were unique to me. And they were an amalgamation of a lot of people's wisdoms that I put together. And yeah, people have been telling me that I should charge $5,000 for the course. I might get around to that someday, but right now you can just have it for free. So that's cool. The third one, find your passion. It's not finding, it's developing, but actually there's an article on my website that answers that too.
What's the title to that article?
I believe it's called How to Find My Passion.
Okay.
We'll that in the show notes as well. But that basically walks people through I would be giving it a disservice if I tried to summarize it, but that's actually helped like thousands.
I've read that. That helped me.
Yeah. It's a very helpful thing. Is it the be all end all? No. I mean, you're going to have to figure that out for yourself, but I do think that it's worth taking the time to do. Tony Robbins calls one of his methods the Dickens method, as in Charles Dickens. And he calls it the deep Dickens. And what it is you imagine your life in whatever increment you want, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And you say, like, what do I want? Who do I want to be? What do I want to have? Who do I want to be surrounded by? What things do I want? What things do I want to have done? Ask all those questions, right? And actually take the time to write down all of your answers, and then look at where you are now and just figure out what are the steps you need to do to get there by that timeline. If you want a 5-year timeline, fine. If you want a 10-year timeline, fine, right? And figure out, like, who do you want to be in that timeline, and what will you have to do to be that person, right? If you want to be patient, you're going to have to work on your patience. So you're going to have to surround yourself by things that make you impatient and consciously try to develop your patience, right? Like that stealth thing I was talking about, right? To develop that stat, right? I think a lot of people pray for things and they don't quite understand what they're asking for. They're saying, I pray for patience. Are you sure? Because you're going to get a lot of irritating people, because that's how you develop patience, is you get around things that make you impatient, and then you force yourself to not be impatient. So then, yeah, you just ask yourself. But those would be the 3 things that I would say: martial arts, financial literacy, and purpose. And the reason, by the way, because I know that there's money is a very charged issue for the investing thing. Money is an extremely charged issue by society. There's so many different kinds of money mindsets. You know, there's the savers who never want to risk any of their money. There's the spenders who just spend it all the time. There's money monks who think that, you know, money's the root of all evil and all these things, right? So to those people, what I would say is that money is a tool, and it magnifies your ability to fulfill your purpose. No matter what your purpose is, the more billions of dollars you have, your purpose will be magnified. So if you are Lex Luthor, then you will be a bigger jerk. If you are Batman, then you will be a more effective Batman.
Money is a magnifier.
Yes, money is a magnifier. It magnifies who you are. If you get a lemon tree and you pick those lemons and you squeeze them, you're going to get lemon juice. If you pick a mango tree and you grow a bunch of mangoes and you squeeze those mangoes, you're going to get mango juice, right? So what kind of juice are you making? That's up to you, right? But it will magnify your impact on the world. So a lot of the time, people have a negative association with money. They actually have a negative association to themselves. They don't trust themselves to have more power. And so that comes back down to that purpose. And C3 yes, is if your purpose fulfills your C3 gus at high levels, one of the C's is contribution. So if you have a true purpose that hits all 6 needs: certainty, connection, contribution, growth, uncertainty, and significance. If it hits all 6 at high levels, then you have a winning purpose, and it will make the world a better place. It'll make your world a better place. It'll make everyone else's world a better place. It's a win-win situation. And at that point, when you have a purpose that empowers you, that you are driven to achieve, and it gets you out of bed in 10 seconds or less, when you have a purpose like that, you will want as many billions of dollars as you can get your hands on to make that purpose happen, so that you can make the world a better place.
Absolutely. That is brilliant. The current book I'm listening to at work over and over again is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's got just so many great inspirational ideas on how to make and earn and receive more money. And I think that we were all made to upgrade and to be wealthy and abundant in all areas of life. And I really appreciate you coming on the show and taking the time to do this and empowering the guests with some helpful suggestions and tools and ideas, tips, tricks, you know, like to implement and try out and experiment with for themselves. I think that you've covered some really brilliant ones that will take a lot of time to habituate, but once anybody does similar things or the same things that you have been doing for years and years now, they're going to enjoy the same results as you or similar results. Not everybody wants to be an author, but whatever anyone wants to be, I believe that we can all implement new beliefs and ideas and habits and perspectives, upgrade our lifestyles, our personal reality, and win the game of life. And as long as you're living a life of fulfillment and meaning, and you're excited to get up in the morning and you have your purpose, there's going to be less suffering and a whole lot more winning. I really believe that. Is there anything else that you want to share? Where can people find you on social media, your website? Where can they buy books, which we'll also put a link in below?
Sure. Yeah. It was my honor to be on here as well. It was such a privilege talking to you, Pete. You can find me. I have a website, ononorthey.com. That's ONONORTHEY.com. My books are on Amazon. They're called the Shard Chronicles. And socials are at Ono Northey most of the time. So, Instagram is actually me. Twitter is my wife pretending to be me, as is TikTok. Because
I love your Instagram. You obviously have a sense of humor. Some of the things on there that I get to see make me laugh, and I share them.
Thank you. Well, I will accept that praise because that was actually me. The rest of them, I don't know. So if I say anything weird on my Twitter, don't get mad at me.
That's awesome.
I will say a one parting thing. There are only two life purposes that are worthy of pursuit: increase the awesome or decrease the suck. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ono. I really appreciate you. I love what you've been doing. I love what you are expanding into and continuing to do. And as you continue to up level and upgrade in every way, I truly expect that you're going to live an even more brilliant life that will cause ripple effects in the lives of many. And then those lives will also cause ripple effects in the lives of others. And that's why I really appreciate guests like you on the show. Good in the Head is at www.goodinthehead.com. On all the social media, Good in the Head is one word. Just go check it out. Visit the website, click on menu, explore the website, take and share anything and everything you think that may be useful to others. The entire goal and purpose of my life now is to empower others to help themselves. I'm not a helper. I'm an empowerment agent. And I believe in the teaching from Simon Sinek that together is better and together we will rise. And thank you so much. And I'll talk to you in just a moment once we stop recording. Thank you so much, Ono.
My pleasure.